This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. So today, I'm really excited to speak with our guest today. And I'm also curious because she has kind of two different focuses going on in her agency and how she manages them. She's a marketing leader, a thought leader, an entrepreneur, a speaker, and a photographer. She's a brand and marketing strategist with many years of experience creating thoughtful and innovative digital marketing experiences. She's the founder and CEO of AlchemyThree and Alchemy Wealth Marketing. Tara Johnson, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to dig in.
Where are you joining us from today?
I am phoning in all the way from Concord, Massachusetts.
Which is right down the street from me here in Acton, Massachusetts, probably just a few miles away.
Yep, that's right.
So Tara, what is the single most powerful strategy for success in your marketing agency these days?
Boy, that's a great question. A few things come to mind, but primarily for me, it's all about showing up as authentically as possible, and having as many conversations as I can throughout the course of the week and months. Networking is key, and also just being as authentic as possible in terms of client meetings and other opportunities that I have. It's really about those conversations that I find is the most valuable piece of our strategy, is me getting in there and having those chats.
So we went through kind of a phase where, we did a lot of in-person networking events. Then we went 2-3 years or more without a lot of in-person networking events starting in 2020. And now we're doing more in person again. But how have you navigated that dynamic of having to go remote and now you're trying to reintroduce in-person networking? And how have you navigated that?
Well, I mean, like everyone else, I try to roll with the punches as best I can. As far as meeting virtually, that's my natural tendency anyway. I've been working in the virtual space for a really long time. So that shift was, I was ready to welcome those virtual calls. I am absolutely an introverted human, so that's where that's where I'm most comfortable. That said, it is that discomfort that is most important for a lot of us in terms of forging success and being seen and heard. So for me, it's been re-engaging with networking groups and fellow business owners and trying to show up for others as much as possible, and elevating their businesses however I can. So yeah, it's a lot of in-person networking, and one of my mentors continues to remind me that it is networking season. So I'm trying to get in there in person and show up as often as I can throughout the week.
So I'm also very introverted, and I enjoy having good one-on-one conversations like we're starting to have now. But the idea of going to a cocktail hour and working the room and talking to 20 people in an hour, that's not my idea of fun.
That's right. It can be really tough. It can be intimidating. And I'm trying to observe others as much as I can. There are folks who they know how to work a room. They know who they want to talk to. And what I have found is kind of looking at the list of attendees ahead of time and figuring out who do I want to have conversations with. That's most helpful for me. And maybe that would be helpful for you as well. Kind of doing your homework before you jump in.
So how do you go about striking up conversations with strangers that you think you'd like to talk to?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit awkward. I'm not sure if I have a secret sauce that works every single time. I mean, I think asking questions is my go-to. Absolutely. I mean, folks like talking about themselves. That's human nature. So I love to jump in and be as curious as possible. That's maybe the best advice that I have. But I'm still learning the ropes.
So what are the kinds of events that you found to be the most fruitful for you?
So I do belong to a group called Provisors, which has a very broad and vast network of professionals who have great deals of experience that they bring to the table. And there are a number of events that I can attend through that group. And then if I receive invitations from other folks that I have connected with, I try to say yes as often as my schedule and my kids' sports and all of that, as much as that allows. I'm also in an accountability group, and so that leads to other events opportunities also. But those are the primary. I try to engage, but also be fairly choosy, especially when it comes to evening events, because I have a family, I have kids that are doing stuff, and if it's not something that interests me, I will probably choose to hang out with my family instead. So I try to kinda case the joint ahead of time and figure out if it's a good fit.
So I'm familiar with Provisors a little bit. I think that's kind of a national, if not international, networking group of professional service advisors, right? So that's easy enough to find if you Google it. But I'm curious about the accountability group, if that's kind of more an informal group that you put together, or if that's part of a more organized organization.
So I have been in a couple of networking groups in the past, and it did start with a formalized version. I was part of a mastermind in 2018. The groups that I'm involved with now are sort of lighter versions of that mastermind and folks that I've stayed in touch with. And so we will try to organize amongst ourselves. I'm also involved in a group called Xenagos, which I highly recommend to any small to mid-sized business owners.
How do you spell that?
Xenagos, Zenagos. I talk about them all the time to various business owners. These are high caliber professional women who have been around the block in a number of ways, working with and for Fortune 500 companies. Um, all of them bring a different forte to the table in terms of mentorship, but it's really affordable, right? I think that, a couple of them are semi-retired, so they wanna be helpful, and they're very involved and responsive, which is lovely. So, if I have a problem, I can come to them and I can have a very real conversation in terms of getting advice and feedback. Um, they also help each and every business owner that's in this group to sort of hone in on struggles that they might be having. For me, a lot of it is money stuff, right? We all kind of have money stories that we bring to the table and things that we've internalized over the years from, how we've grown up and how that's sort of manifested as grown-ups, and that's the stuff that I struggle with the most, so they've been working with me personally on those things, but they deal with growing a team, finding your marketing channels, honing that strategy, and then we have accountability calls as well that are really valuable, and we get to help each other. I find it so much easier to help others than it is to help myself.
Have you always been a part of these groups, or how long did it take you to realize that these were valuable?
It took me a minute to realize, it definitely took me a minute. So, I started this journey as an art student, and that's what I thought I would always do was make art and just somehow make a living, and we all know it doesn't work that way. Um, I was freelancing and then eventually, sort of put a stake in the ground and formed Alchemy3, and so it was probably yeah, it was 2 years, post forming Alchemy3 that I'd gotten involved in some online courses, and there was one in particular that I was really enjoying, and it wasn't a huge, money commitment, and so when the leader of that effort took to the internet and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting a mastermind where I work with people individually and I bring a group of like-minded humans together to solve these problems, and hold one another accountable, I was like, "Great, take my money." And it freaked my husband out for sure, but it was the best investment I've ever made in my business. It challenged me. I met like-minded humans that I'm still in touch with today, and it really taught me that I don't need to reinvent the wheel and I don't need to work in a vacuum. I can lean on others. I was able to validate my business by taking a look at how others were running theirs. I could see where these people were, um, you know, a couple years out from where I was, which was really interesting. And then there would be folks that would come in that are just getting started. So there was a range there, and it was just so wonderful to not be all by myself. I think that as business owners, it's really, really isolating, and we're not very kind to ourselves usually, right? I mean, I think it's a lot of type A, hardworking folk that strike out on their own. But if it's just you, it likely isn't gonna go well. So I find that to be just absolutely invaluable to have that sounding board.
There's another group I'd give a shout out to while we're talking about groups. I was a member of it for a dozen years or so. Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO. It's an international group of business owners. There's a strong local Boston chapter with at least 100 members or so. That sounds similar as well. That gave me a lot of support as I was building out my own business. Sounds like these are kind of general groups from all different industries, or any of these kind of marketing focused.
So the ones that I'm in now are a bit more generalized. That initial mastermind that I was in several years ago now, it was really for WordPress specific marketing agencies, right? So folks that are building sites on the WordPress platform, um, you know, really integrated within that WordPress community. I would go to WordCamps every year, sometimes several throughout the year. I did some speaking at various WordCamps, and I really found that community to be incredibly generous and invigorating and welcoming, which is wonderful. And so it was really from one of those events that I became familiar with. They were called WP Elevation at the time, run by a human by the name of Troy Dean. He's in Australia. And so those were the courses that I signed on for, got a ton of value, right, virtually. And then when he made the announcement that I think I was probably the first applicant. And I didn't believe we were messaging, but I was like, this has to be a robot. This can't be this real human. So I had a chance to get to know him, and just the most wonderful, creative, supportive people.
If you had to estimate, what percentage of your business has come in through these networking groups?
Oh boy. I would say now probably 30% at the moment. I was in BNI for a very long time, for years and years, which served me very well. BNI is not for everyone.
Which I was in the Concord Minuteman chapter for a little bit less than a year when I first started SmartBooks.
When? What year was that?
2009.
Okay, so I would have come in. Was I in BNI? I don't think I had hopped into BNI just yet. I was still freelancing at that time. But probably about 2012, 2013, I was in the West Concord chapter
Okay.
as a founding member, and then I jumped over to Concord Minuteman, and I was there for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 4 years or so?
Yeah, great group of people. For me, I'm very business to business focused, and it just wasn't that productive from a business developer perspective. But great group of people, and I still hire a few folks from that group to do everything from home handyman services to real estate closings and whatever.
Absolutely, and when I was in those BNI groups, I think it was probably 60 to 70% of my business at that time was coming from BNI. So it was wonderful and really important to me. But then as the business began to expand and we were speaking to different audiences, and I felt like I'd kind of exhausted my resources in some ways, and I didn't really enjoy how it was structured. It started to get kind of like, people get on people's nerves, and it just, there was a little bit of drama that I wasn't enjoying. So I knew it was time to go.
Yeah. Cool. And so, tell me a little bit more about the kinds of clients that you're looking to work with and who you're trying to meet.
Well, so there's Alchemy3, which is where everything started. And that is centered around creating custom marketing plans for small to mid-sized service-based businesses. So on that side, we're looking for collaborative, forward-thinking people who don't want to spend their time doing the marketing, right? They're growing. They're not to a point where they could hire in-house necessarily. And so the value that we bring is getting a handle on their brand personality, or we establish the brand from scratch, which is one of my favorite things to do. We craft a strategy and we build this profile along with tons and tons of research so that it's fully formed and we can effectively run with that strategy. We pull in the business owners when we need, but we're the point is to be very protective of their time, to reduce that marketing overwhelm so that they can stay in their zone of genius and remain where they should be, which is helping clients and supporting clients. So on that side, it's a bit more open. It's really a question of, are you interested in telling your story, right? Some people don't believe in using storytelling in marketing, which I find utterly bizarre because people did not buy from businesses, they buy from human beings. And so if you can step into that place and really connect with people on that brand level, I, everything's so easy after that, really. So we're kind of looking for, just creative small to mid-sized businesses doing great things in the world, right? On the other side of the table, we have Alchemy Wealth Marketing, which is focused on supporting female-led financial advisory firms. It's obviously a very male-dominated industry, so we want to help them stand out by transforming their scattered marketing into a clear, powerful story. And just like the A3 side for AWM, we're building everything fully custom and we're encapsulating their voice and telling that story in a way that's compelling and allows them to speak directly to the folks that they're best positioned to serve.
Most of the folks I speak with have, 5 to 20 staff kind of size firms, which are relatively small. I think you're in that range, right?
Yeah, I have about 10, it depends on the project, but about 10 to 12 people that work on my team.
So how do you manage that split of focus between Alchemy Wealth Management, which is very kind of narrowly defined and very specific, versus more general SMB under Alchemy3?
I don't find that it's all that different, to be completely honest with you. I mean, there's a certain element of polish on the Alchemy Wealth marketing side. We also have to do a lot of compliance. We have to manage that process of compliance. So within the financial industry, you have to play by the rules of the broker dealer, and you need to make sure that you're ticking certain boxes. Also, another issue that we recognize within that space is a lot of the tools that are available and pre-approved by compliance is very static, very stale, very templated, and boxes them in right away. So that's another element that we're bringing to the table.
So a lot of these advisory firms are they're kind of like, forgive my probably butchering the language, but they're basically sub-advisors to a larger broker, right? And so that larger broker dictates what they can do and cannot do from a marketing perspective.
For the most part, yeah, a lot of it has to do with verbiage. They have certain restrictions in place depending on who that broker dealer is. We're much more we're closely suited for RIAs as opposed to some of the bigger firms. So these smaller boutique firms tend to be a really great fit for us because there's a little more freedom in terms of what's possible. But the conversations are pretty much the same, right? Because we're just trying to figure out what makes you different because these advisors are all pretty much doing the same thing. Um, but the approach is really different, right? And the philosophies for these different firms vary quite a bit. Their bedside manner, the way that they interact with their clients, some of them are very high touch. They become very close to the clients and their families, and they're very legacy minded. Um, in fact, we found that to be true with a lot of the female clients that we work with. Not to say dudes don't do that, because they absolutely have. We definitely have male clients. A lot of our best clients are male financial advisors, but the game is really different for women in that space. And that's something I'm very passionate about as a female business owner. And so there's a connection there for me. And I want to elevate their practices as much as possible and tell their story.
How do you find the marketing is different for the female-led firms?
I don't think that I think that what's different, of course, that's always a question of who's their target audience, right? So that's usually the main difference in terms of messaging. But as a female business owner and as a woman in the financial space, there is there are certain expectations and sort of a defined view of what success means. And that definition is determined by the white men in the room, essentially, right? So they're sort of already set up to either assimilate or have to go a really different route. And so I wouldn't say it's different in terms of marketing, but the headspace is different. The way that they run their businesses tends to be quite different. Um, a lot of what resonates with me is the concept of there's a lot of talk about work-life balance. I don't think that that actually exists. Um, and as being women are the caregivers, right? And we're sort of pigeonholed oftentimes. And so running a business in that space is different. And I know what that feels like. And so working with them, we can go quite a bit deeper with our female clients. Um, and they often are the ones supporting, widows and single women and, other non-traditional family dynamics. Um, they're often the ones sort of supporting these marginalized communities because they are also a minority within their professional space. And it's those details that really interest me. And I see so much potential for firms to kind of step into that authentic voice and really tell that story and take down some of the barriers of the terminology that's there, right? There's a fair bit of gatekeeping that happens. Um, and so I'm also really interested in approaching the industry in a different way, right? And presenting those details in a different way. And so those are the people we're looking for who want to play by a different set of rules.
And so you mentioned you're getting about 30 or so percent of business through these networking groups. I would assume the majority might come from referrals from existing clients, uh, but I don't want to presume that. So where do you get the rest of your business?
So the rest of my business would come from attending conferences, schmoozing, getting to know other people, partnerships as well.
Who do you like to partner with?
Oh boy, love to partner with other consultants. We love to partner with, oh goodness, tech companies, IT companies, to be more specific. Oftentimes they're working with folks that are looking for our kinds of services. Um, yeah, where there's that nice overlap, right? Those referrals can be somewhat mutual and sort of mutually beneficial. That's who we like to partner with. In some cases, um, writers, I've received referrals from some writers that we've hired. I've received referrals from, of course, existing clients, but I've even received referrals from clients that, or not clients, from connections that I hadn't yet met, which is kind of interesting. And so I think that maybe speaks to the specificity of the Alchemy Wealth niche, maybe, or perhaps I just got lucky.
Well, I can tell you're definitely working the personal networking and personal relationships angle, which is different than how some other firms are addressing their growth challenge. So that's all interesting to hear.
I met that.
So you talked a little bit about what success looks like for clients. I'm curious for your own firm internally, how you define and measure success, and if we were sitting down 3 or 5 years from now and you had a great run and were really successful, like, what would that look like, and how would you measure that success?
You know, this is a tough one. This really is a tough one for me. So there's a few ways that I would measure success, and I think I have to think about it from a personal standpoint, and then I also need to think about it from a team perspective as well. My team is really important to me. So kind of looking at the numbers, if I could 3 to 5x the business in 5 years, that would be solid, right?
That would be incredible.
But I think beyond the numbers, which there's numbers are great and that's fine, but in my mind, it really comes down to freedom and flexibility. I think a really strong indicator of success would be how much am I needed in the business, for one, right? I'm doing all of the sales right now. I need to be pulled in for some operational and admin stuff, of course. Um, but I think if I could be nearly out of the business entirely, that would be a huge win. That would be a strong indicator of success for me. Um, and really empowering my team as well to step into their own zones of genius and give them ways to sort of elevate their positions within the business. That's another piece of all of this. So yes to the numbers, but if I have time to travel with my family, if I can take not 1 month off, which I did manage to do, not this year, but a couple of years ago, if I could take 2 solid months off a year, huge win. That'd be massive. That might be the strongest indicator for me actually, is being able to take 2 months off and travel the entire time.
Well, that's very strategic, and it's different than I often get as an answer to that question. Oftentimes, it's about growth rate or a certain number of customers we serve, but you're trying to build a business that can more or less run without you. And if I use, finance terms, you're trying to build enterprise value where the business is worth something apart from you. It's not you plus a few helpers. It's business that you can step away from. And even if you wanted to more dramatically detach and just be an owner and not an operator, maybe you could do that, right? So I think that probably resonates with a lot of folks listening.
That's right. I mean, I certainly know that I've been thinking about valuation a little more lately and what that would mean to sell the business. And I don't really like thinking about selling because I enjoy it so much and it is my baby. Um, but I'm also well aware of the importance of processes and making sure that and I actually did a couple of videos on LinkedIn about this recently. Um, if I'm needed all the time, what kind of a business is that? Like, who wants to buy that business? That's crazy. It needs to be able to run on its own, and it needs to have all of those pieces pulled together in a really organized, thoughtful way, right? I mean, people want a potential buyer wants to be able to just plug it in and run with it, and also see that you have a pipeline and you have various marketing channels, and you have a solid email list that continues to grow, and that forward moving momentum that's going without you is tremendous, right? Like, if I were looking to buy a business, that's what I would be looking for, 100%.
So what are some challenges that you're facing now in that pursuit or something that you recently had to overcome?
Well, this year has been kind of weird, I would say. We're starting to see more growth now. It has not been as predictive as it has been in the past. And so that's been a struggle for me and so many other business owners this year because of the uncertainty, and marketing generally is one of the first things to get dropped from any budget. So when we have the uncertainty or the current administration, which is like, in my estimation, and I don't want to get political, but they're just lighting everything on fire for the sake of, none of it makes a lot of sense. So folks are scared and worried, and and they're less likely to spend money and to really dig into a deep strategy. So that's been the biggest challenge for me this year. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. There's been some hiring challenges and stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary, really. I mean, I have such a solid team and such a wonderful crew of folks that I just completely trust, and they always have the client's best interest in mind. That Yeah, I'm mostly just worrying about big picture stuff that I don't have any control over. So I'm trying to, like, let it go.
Right. Can't worry about what you can't control.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah.
So in my day job, I run, an accounting and bookkeeping and tax and financial advisory business. So I got to ask you at least a question or two about how you go about managing the bookkeeping, accounting, and finances at your business. So I'm curious, who do you have doing that work, and how do you as the owner oversee that work?
Well, I had a couple of really spectacular bookkeepers. And that is the very first thing that I outsourced, was bookkeeping, because I knew I was terrible at it, and I knew that that's not where I wanted to spend my time. So that was the first outsource, aside from my very first full-time hire. Um, I was, Alchemy3 and LLC for a really long time, and I just made the switch to becoming an S corp this year. So with that change, I had to move to a third party, service provider, and so they're the ones that are taking care of all of the S corp registration and setting up payroll and all of those things. And this particular company is for agency owners specifically, um, and it's going pretty well so far, knock on wood. The name of the I don't know if you wanna know the name of the company. They are called Collective, and it's pretty straightforward. So that's what I'm running with right now. But listen, you should check in with me in 6 months and see what I say then, because, like, who knows, right? No, like, especially come tax time, I could be singing a really different tune.
Well, often it is smart to, you get to a certain size or scale, the S corp starts to make sense from a tax perspective.
Right.
And so from managing the business perspective, what kinds of reports or financial metrics do you like to keep an eye on so you know what's going on and can help guide the decisions that you make?
This is my struggle. Money has been a struggle for me for quite some time. This is something I need to work through with my therapist, I'm sure, and I need to add that to the list. Um, but I do love keeping an eye on the monthly P&L statements. So that's one thing that over the years I've learned to get comfortable with. So that's a definite. Um, I also mentioned Xenagos and my mentor Karen. Her and I have been working on a 10-month forecasting document, um, which tracks recurring income and business and clients. It's helping me to sort of visualize churn because we do have 12-month agreements. Sometimes the idea is to hopefully have them never leave, and there are a few clients that have never left. Um, but, if you're really being honest with yourself, there is a timeline, right? So you really have to start to plan out and make sure that you have that pipeline to replace any churn or lost income. So that's another report, or document rather, that I like to keep a close eye on. Um, yeah, and then, of course, the value of certain marketing channels, right? Like, where are the leads coming in? How much am I spending on events that I attend and conferences? Or if we're running ads, what does that ROI look like? And what makes sense, right? Kind of constantly reevaluating those channels.
So for someone who says you have some challenges around money attitudes, it sounds like you definitely have your arms around what's important though. It's client retention, it's what sales channels are working for you, what's the cost of new client acquisition through different channels. So it sounds like you're thinking about the right things.
Well, I'm thinking about these things because I have really great people who are trying to hold my attention to these things that are important, right? Like, again, I give so much credit to Karen, who's my Xenagos, business mom, so to speak, and she's really held my feet to the fire and has been very adamant that, listen, this isn't gonna be comfortable, but it's so, so important. And it's true. Money is a tool, right? It it doesn't help to look at your number. I used to look at my numbers and have that be a direct reflection of who I am as a person, which is insane. That doesn't make any sense. And I think this also speaks back to being isolated as a business owner. And so your self-worth, at least in my case, was really wrapped up in, what does the end of my month look like? Right? What are those bank statement, like, I didn't wanna look at any of that stuff. So, it's because I've surrounded myself with people that are willing to teach me hard lessons.
I think there's a certain element of you start a business, you've got to get it to a certain point to be financially successful and profitable and cash flow positive to justify all the risk and investment that you took to start the business and all the stress you have to deal with as a business owner. But then from there, once you hit a certain level, then I think it comes down to personal priorities. And some folks just want to keep growing it and doubling the business and doubling it again and doubling it again as fast as possible and trying to build as much enterprise value as possible. And then other folks say, well, I've interviewed a client, a Dev Collaborative. They were on an early episode of the podcast here, and they take a very different approach. They're not trying to maximize profitability and growth. They have a cause they're trying to support. They work primarily with nonprofits. Most of their employees have kind of 30-hour work weeks. They're really into work-life balance, and for them, it's more important to have a balanced firm supporting the kinds of clients and causes that they feel strongly about than it is to maximize revenue and profitability. And everybody's on this spectrum, but once you got to get to a certain point where you can pay the bills and feed the family and send the kids to college or whatever. But beyond there, it really comes down to personal priorities and decisions.
Because you're not gonna get that time back, So if you're just grinding it out every single day and you're torturing your team, right? Like, just looking at the numbers and thinking only about growth. What fun is that, you wanna I just think, yeah, quality of life is what it's all about. Um, Sure, growing really fast, selling the business and making tons of money, that's dreamy, but that it typically is not realistic. And I think trying to like enjoy the journey as much as possible, as opposed to only focusing on the end result, is really the best, most human approach to running a business.
So if we went back to the days of little Tara, did you ever think you would be starting and running your own business?
No, absolutely not. 100%. Goodness, no, no, no. I wanted to be an artist, and that's it. That's all I wanted to do was make art. So I went to art school in college. And yeah, when I was really little, it was all about art. It was all about making stuff. And that was a strong underlying thread for me through college. I just wanted to live in the dark room. And then in my early 20s, I finally fully realized that I can't just make stuff and magically have a paycheck, right? Like there's different pieces to this that I just didn't know anything about. I wasn't taught the elements of running a business, which is a mistake. I feel even for our kids, they still need to understand the ins and outs of running a business. So I made art during the day and I waited tables at night for a long time. And that kind of ran its course. I took graphic design classes and started freelancing. And that was the trajectory really for me. So worked some in-house design jobs, kind of got bored. I'm not great working for other people. I'm not very good at looking busy. I'm either busy or I'm doing something, so that just didn't sit well with me. So it wasn't until I had kids that I really leaned very hard into freelance and agency life. So yeah, when I was young, I was just gonna make beautiful art and get paid for it and live happily ever after.
So what was that transition like? It sounded like you kind of inched your way into building a firm, right? What was that journey like?
It was, of course, really hard because you do everything, right? I was doing all of the branding, I was writing the content. For a very long time, actually, I was only doing graphic design. Uh, but then I realized I was doing graphic design and then, oh, I'll build websites for people. But after a couple of years of doing that, I I made the realization that none of this is ever one and done, right? Like continual building out of these elements. Like your website should never just be built and then launched and never touched again, right? A lot of these websites need to be maintained. They need to be locked down from a security standpoint. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that needs to be paid attention to. So I'm a student of the internet by and large. And of course, being part of that mastermind journey that I mentioned, it really opened my eyes as far as what's really needed. And if you want to help these business owners be good stewards of their business and also have a solid marketing approach, it needs to be continual and consistent. Right. And so one and done just wasn't serving my clients, and I wanted to elevate those clients to the best of my ability, so that just pushed me to learn more, to do more, and eventually hire people to do things better than me.
How long into the business did you hire the first employee?
2.5 years, I think, before I made my first full-time hire. I was finding some freelancers here and there on the web dev side, content a little bit here and there. But yeah, it wasn't until I was in this mastermind and I was challenged to make my first hire, whether I had enough work for them or not. I mean, they were basically like, list all of the things that number one, you don't want to do, you're not good at, and is not a good use of your time. That's a pretty long list, right? So I took that and I ran with it, and I never looked back.
That's great. Definitely a step function. You make that first hire, you have to go sell a business to keep them busy and get them paid for it.
Yes, that's absolutely that's very true, but then you realize you have more time to go sell.
So you went to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for a while, right? So isn't that where the first web browser was built, Mosaic, in the mid-90s?
I don't know, is that true?
I think so, because I went to my freshman year of college was 1994, 95. And I think Mosaic was like the web browser, and it came out of Urbana-Champaign, if I remember right. And then, Netscape and then Internet Explorer and everybody else, Google came along after that. But I do remember that initially.
Well, I wouldn't know because I was in the dark room.
Perfect for an introvert.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So if you could look back over the last, X number of years since you started the business and give yourself some advice based on everything you've learned, what would you tell yourself?
Boy, I would tell myself that networking is essential and to get over myself and to just get out there and talk to people, right? Even though it's uncomfortable, do it. I would also tell myself to have a reminder to always think who, not how, as opposed to doing all of the things all the time. Um, I love to learn. I'm a little bit of a control freak. I very much want to understand the different components of the business, of course. Um, but doing those things does not facilitate growth, right? You need to find the people that can do it and do it really well, and in my case, much better than what I can do, right? I should not be building websites. Like, that's not a good use of my time. Um, and then I would also really encourage my younger self to get comfortable with money. Get very comfortable with money. Take a class, ask lots of questions, learn how to invest. Again, it's a tool. It's a really important tool, and you can't run a business without it, and you can't make smart decisions without understanding the implications of making that money, making sure that if you take out a business line of credit, what does that mean? What does that look like? Um, you know, what an investment, what does that look like and how does that make sense for your business? You can't fly blind. You just can't, and you can't hide from the money stuff.
Yeah, and the money issues often manifest themselves, I've seen at least in terms of, pricing and figuring out how to price services to be profitable and have discussions about value with clients, not just, who can do it for the lowest price, but who can deliver the most value regardless of price when you compare price with the value of the deliverable, and that ratio is key. And moving past like looking at the income statement to see how you did last month to figuring out these are the key financial performance metrics I need to hit as far as utilization or labor value multiple or, collection days sales outstanding, whatever is going to move the needle toward the financial results that you need in your own business. Just getting comfortable and, either getting comfortable and knowledgeable enough yourself or hiring that right person who can crunch the numbers, figure out the right metrics, and present them to you so that you are on top of the financial information you need to make good business decisions. That's critical as you scale the business.
That's right. It really is.
So we're talking a lot about business here, but what do you like to do outside of work?
Drink really strong IPAs. I like to I'm a knitter. I do like to knit. I go on a knitting retreat every year with buddies of mine. I love scary movies. I love spooky season, which we are in right now.
All right, we're almost Halloween's approaching. Fast.
So good. It's my favorite. So this is probably my most creative time because I go big with the Halloween decorations. It's kind of like a rock concert here in West Concord in our neighborhood on Halloween, and it's on Friday this year, which is so awesome. um, and making stuff, which I mentioned. getting back into making art, that has become much more important to me. Just a few months ago, one of the things that's bringing me really great joy at the moment is a tiny free art gallery that I have installed. My husband, we work together. We installed in front of our house. um, it's like those little libraries you see for books, but it's for art. And so you can leave art, you can take art, you can do both, you can do nothing and just enjoy the art. So I'm going to be putting up a new exhibit today. And of course, it is a Halloween theme. So I'm pretty excited.
Nice. What do you have a favorite horror movie series that you like? You watch everything.
I don't know if I have a favorite series necessarily. A couple of my favorites would be Hereditary is incredible. Oh my gosh. Pet Cemetery, the original Pet Cemetery from I think like late 80s, probably 87. Incredible. What else? The Shining, of course, because it's a classic and it just had there's so many things that you start to see like that's a definite rewatch. It's so good. Um there's this crazy French horror movie that I saw a number of years ago and I haven't been able to bring myself to rewatch it, but it's called High Tension. Crazy. Crazy, crazy. I tend to not do a lot of slashers, though those can be pretty fun.
I'll have to check these out. I have only seen a couple of them.
They're really good.
I'm kind of a fan of the Halloween series myself. That was like maybe the first I ever. Halloween 2, I think, was like the first horror movie I ever watched as a kid. I might have been a little bit young when I watched it, but it was good.
Did it give you nightmares?
No, I don't really get nightmares from movies.
You're a scary movie guy. Get in there. You got to check them out.
Anything else you like to do?
Love traveling. That's my number one favorite thing to do ever is travel for sure.
What are some of your favorite trips?
Italy is always at the top of my list. My husband and I did a bike trip through Tuscany pre-kids. And a while ago now, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I did the same thing about 19 years ago. Bike tour through Tuscany before kids. Yes, it was awesome.
It was just glorious. I cannot wait to go back.
Well, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation here, and you've definitely been open and genuine about your entrepreneurial journey, got you where you are now, and how you're trying to prioritize, work and getting comfortable with money and your life interests and everything. So I've really enjoyed the conversation. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way would be email, right? So Tara at AlchemyThree.com, AlchemyThree.com. Have people follow my tiny art gallery.
How do they find that?
They can go to Instagram and they can put in little free gallery _ Concord.
All right.
And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time.
All right. Tara Johnson. There are probably multiple Tara Johnsons, but Tara Johnson of Alchemy is how you find her.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
So this has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We'll see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time.